Welcome to Real Herbalism Radio, show 259, recorded at Big Dog Studios in Eugene, Oregon. This show is made possible by the Herbal Entrepreneur Conference. Have you got your free ticket to the Herbal Entrepreneur Conference yet? Head on over to herbalentrepreneur.com now to join Rosemary Gladstar, Margie Flint, Nancy Phillips, Lucy Jones, Talal Al-Ahmed, Yolanda Joy, and many more at the virtual event March 22nd through the 26th. You'll get their best tips, strategies, and ideas to help you on your journey to grow your own herbal business. So just jump in now at the herbalentrepreneur.com. The Real Herb Market. Do you make herbal products for sale? At the Real Herb Market, we connect herbal makers like you with people who appreciate the power of natural herbal care. Become a seller at the Real Herb Market today. Visit them at therealherbmarket.com. Now, here are your hosts.
I'm Candace Hunter.
I'm Patrick Hunter.
And welcome to Real Herbalism Radio. Hey, Patrick.
Hi, Candace.
Ready to get a little witchy with it?
Waka, waka, waka. It was funny. It was the first time that we'd ever interviewed anybody, Alyssa Human. First time we interviewed anyone that was a fan, anyone that had listened to the show, that had done 5 years of prior listening and was inspired by it.
It is so cool. That was a really cool experience. And I mean, I've been watching Alyssa on Instagram and all of that for a while now, and she's like a with it herbalist.
Yeah, she's the new generation of herbalists.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about like the wounded healer and all of that, and I really, really feel that especially, I was feeling it before 2020, smacked us all upside the head.
Right.
But even more so now, after that year's done, and we're already into 2021, and the, head smack ups aren't really quite done. We keep getting, crazy things happening. I feel like the wounded healer and the person that, like Alyssa, who had a plan. She had a plan. She was going to do this, and this is what she was going to do. And her world was all structured around it. And this is the way life was. And she was sure of herself. And then suddenly she found herself in essentially a really different world. I mean, she got king size smackdown there.
Yeah. I mean, to find out that your education is bunk.
Yeah, I mean
you might have been learning something, but you weren't going to be credentialed, what you were paying for.
Right. And then to realize that the entire path you've been on is the wrong path. Not even just a little bit wrong, but that's just your change. Change is happening. It's happening big time.
But
she made radical change over 5 years.
She did, and the funny thing about it is that what brought her to herbalism wasn't a shaman or a sage, right, or some
it was TV show.
It was a TV show.
I love that. Yes.
And I thought what was really interesting is because we liked that show. And, I remember when I first saw it, I was like, wow, they're really using
like real herbs.
They're really using herbalism and herbs in treating things, not just
And there were a lot of times where they were saying, well, you use this, we're going to use this for this, and I was like, yeah, actually, somebody actually did some research.
I would venture to guess that there was some definite, probably a local person in Portland
herbal
that
consultant
was consulting with that to do that, but she would be so inspired by that character Rosalie from Grimm, that she would start to like as she was saying, be either crying and then just digging on Grimm and then say, hey, well, let's go to Portland. Which we've mentioned this in the show many times before that. Oregon and the West Coast, but specifically Oregon, is like the catch-all for everybody that's trying to leave to start anew.
If you want to make a big change, you go to Oregon.
Right.
And then you go to wherever change is taking you. Most of us don't stay, but...
Yeah, many of us don't stay very long in Oregon, 2 to 5 years maybe.
Yeah.
But for her to, uproot her small family at the time and then... or whatever it was, however her plan or however her time frame was, but it was just like she came here and she did a tour of Portland for her birthday for her husband to show him all the places where they filmed Grimm. That was just really interesting. And then it started to bring up a larger conversation of in the last 10 years since we've been doing it, maybe we're more cognizant of, but since we've been doing Real Herbalism Radio and the Practical Herbalist, how many different shows have had herbalism as a major function of their show. Like,
Right.
like, I'm not saying it's a medical drama per se, but what I am saying it's, a very, there's an astute, learned person that knows the herbs.
And that herbs are actually a bona fide part of the show, not just like someone pulled out a Hallmark card and spouted off whatever it might have said about the flower, and then that was like the whole of the herb in the entire show. There's things where the herbs are important things. Like, I mean, we used to watch Cadfile murder mysteries.
Oh yeah,
which it's an old series.
Yeah, back in the 90s.
But Cadfile was actually working with herbs regularly. Herbs were center stage in terms of what the lifestyle was. He was actually all about solving the murders, and it was a murder mystery series. And,
but he was plants a monk doing herbs.
Plants were a real important part of that show. They were, central.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike Murdoch mysteries, which herbs come up regularly, but the science and technology is more the interesting stuff of the shows.
Right. Usually in the case of Murdoch, it comes up in more of a, what poison is it?
Right. Exactly. Right.
That's water hemlock, or that's this, or that's that. It's rarely ever, it's used sometimes they'll say it was used in a folk remedy. Right. They'll find it and they'll go, oh, what was that? And they'll explain it.
Right.
But that movie or that show is, right at the turn of the century, late 1800s,
the beginning,
early 1900s. So it's
beginning of the industrial age.
Yeah. That transfer of folk medicine to science-based medicine was really heavy at that point.
The transfer of plant-based medicine to chemical-based medicine, because that's really what the essence of it was.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the medicine was plant-based because that's just what there was. There wasn't another option. It wasn't folk only. All the well-respected doctors were very well educated with regard to plants. And the Industrial Revolution began to really change that because our focus started to be much more on single constituents or certain parts of a plant rather than the whole plant, on chemical structures. We kept going smaller and smaller into like atoms and molecules and in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that was an important development for better understanding how human beings, how our health works and what we need to do, and how whatever it is that we're using as our medicine will function in the human body. Now we've reached a point, 50 years-ish later. 120-ish. Well, I mean, the Industrial Revolution extends a little bit beyond the 19th century.
Late 1800s too.
So a century and a half later, we're at a point where we did all of that exploration, and now it's time to come back around to recognize the plants on both that old-fashioned style with all the humors and the energetics, but also being able to understand them on the scientific style. What is the constituent? What are the chemicals that are functioning, and how are they, connecting with the molecules in the body or the systems or whatever? And so it's like a big turn or a big, cycle that we've been through. And seeing herbalists like Alyssa is exciting to me because she's got the respect and the care and the love of science, as well as the love of the energetics and the magical part of the plants, the wholeness of the plants. And I think that's part of where we're at. And that's why I was going with the whole shamanic thing, that I think her generation and the younger generation of herbalists coming up are very much about healing that woundedness. Because in medicine, that's essentially what happened, is we wrenched apart plants and medicine and acted for a long time like they were somehow separate. It's like a giant glaring wound, which we're now beginning to heal back together. COVID has actually caused herbalism to become much more front and center stage for an awful lot of mainstream people in America. They didn't even know, no one talked about the immune system a year ago. 1 year ago.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't even a part of the conversation. And now knowing that elderberry is good for your immune system is starting to become more common knowledge, even across the non-herbalists.
Right.
And young herbalists like Alyssa they know what it's like to get blindsided by life and to get up and get moving in a better direction and to heal that. So I think they're going to be a real big key. And I think she's going to be a real big key to helping us as a whole entire culture, I guess, heal and so yeah, that's my really long-winded. I'm super excited about this.
Her listening to this right now and starting to get teary-eyed. So, Alyssa, if you're listening or when you're listening, we're thinking of you.
We are. We're very excited. No pressure, but you're just going to have to save the world for us.
Right. Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure.
Do you need your website to do more than just look good? Search engine optimization is the key for your site to be seen on the first page of Google. MudPod Design can get you a free website audit to see how your site stacks up against everybody else. Go to mudpod.design/free-SEO-audit to get yours today to see how they can help you get your site seen on the first page of Google and thereby making your site perform. The other thing is like, that's a really interesting analogy about the fissure between, industrial medicine and traditional medicine. And how that, people disassociated, aspirin with, white willow bark source,
right.
or, settling your stomach with mint versus, something else that has mint.
Menthol.
Yeah, exactly. Like, our son recently bought, stuff for like
the Altoids and stuff.
Yeah, he bought Tums and he said, well, I got the flavored ones. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I got the cherry one and this one. I'm like, oh, heck. I said, why didn't you get the other one that was just mint? He goes, well, that's just mint. I go, mint is a really good thing for your stomach, bro. So now you've got this tropical fruit baloney and this other stuff. And I'd rather have mint.
Right. And a lot of times, because mint is so abundant with its medicine, if you get something often that says it's mint or mint flavored, frequently that is actual like natural flavors, because it's cheaper for them to use natural flavors than it would be for them to use natural flavors for a flavor like cherry or raspberry. Those are much more expensive to produce.
And again, they're not natural flavors. They're going to be some chemical concoction to give you the strawberry.
Because the strawberry, the tropical fruit would be much more expensive to produce naturally.
Exactly. So,
the mint isn't. It's just cheap to produce naturally, so they just do that.
I hope he gets that and realizes that next time Tanata. But what can you do about that? Is what it is. So that disassociation is like you said. I think it's come so far apart with COVID and with the, being a pandemic, the world facing it, a lot of, natural, available remedies, you want to call it, treatments. People are starting to think about them more and what can they do. I mean, especially at the beginning of the pandemic when there was no vaccine and there was no one really knew a lot. There was still a lot of misinformation, like when we did the Herbs and Actions thing, we're bringing out that herbalism to the forefront to let people know that there are things you can do that are going to help you. Look, if you got COVID, you got COVID, but at least help you, one, get through it maybe, maybe two, prevent it if you could somehow, with a better immune system. Maybe you get exposed, but you don't come down with it.
Right.
Those types of things that were available through natural herbs, diet, and other things. And that's what I hope we don't lose, this year when, we're looking at a barrel of, 600 million vaccines by the end of August or July. That's the goal, to have everybody vaccinated twice if need be through the population. And that they forget that, the vaccine saved us. Yes, the vaccine did what it was supposed to do, like it did with smallpox, or it did with rubella and a couple of the other ones that were really bad that we were able to worldwide. But unless we do this worldwide, we're still going to have this problem. So,
and even if we do, we're going to end up having COVID as a part of our lives.
It will be for a while.
Measles, mumps, and rubella still exist, and in some areas you can get them, including some areas in industrialized nations where we like to all believe because we're industrialized, we're somehow, the vaccines have made it like impossible for the plague to get to us. But the fact is the bubonic plague has popped up here and there. Smallpox does still happen in America or in
I'm not sure on
Europe
that one.
Or whatever.
I don't know about smallpox in America. That one I'm not sure.
It's not common, but it's not just because you have a vaccine, that's not a guarantee you won't get it.
Well, I happened to be listening to a podcast with Dr. Fauci the other day, and that was one of the things they were talking about is the eradication of smallpox and where the success was there. I don't know if we have. Maybe we do, but I haven't.
Smallpox I know it still exists in the world and it can still be carried into America. But the whole point isn't whether that one specific thing, whether you're going to fact check that particular one to see if I'm wrong there.
I don't want to do any misinformation.
The point is that just because we're all vaccinated, even if you got every single last person on the entire face of the earth to vaccinate, and they all used the RNA carrier one, so it's the super effective, 95% effective one. Even if everybody did that, it's only 95% effective, not 100% effective, which means there will be 5% of the population who, despite the fact that they're vaccinated, will still be vulnerable. And COVID isn't going to just magically vanish. It's mutating at a really rapid rate because it wants to preserve itself, which is what all viruses want, just like we humans want to preserve ourselves. Vaccines alone, it's going to make probably a huge positive difference to life worldwide for human beings. Very true. But it's not a guarantee that you'll never, ever get COVID. So taking care of your immune system is really important. You know, I hope, like you said, I hope we don't lose that focus of living healthy lives, making healthy choices.
Yeah, I hope that people just learn from it instead of, oh, we're okay now, we can go back to doing what we were doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's another pandemic right around the corner.
Yeah.
You know, and people I don't understand that. I mean, even, you know, just this week, Russia announced that there's been a transmission of HN58, which is a poultry disease, to humans.
Oh, right.
Well, and they said there has been no human to human transfer
yet.
But if that breaks that barrier,
then we've got
we don't
whole
have
other
a vaccine
pandemic
for that.
No,
you know, at all. And so there you are again. We're in a situation where, you know, we're in another situation. We have to be constant vigilant. We have to have our health up. We have to keep going and keep our immune system up, because you never know when the next one's going to come by.
Right.
And not only that, but, you know, the interesting thing that also came out about all of this is that there's been almost no flu cases this year.
Yeah, because people have actually been taking care of themselves and their neighbors, as it were.
I mean, wearing masks and isolating and staying away from people and not being conglomerated in buildings with crappy ventilation systems and, you know, doing all this stuff. I mean, if you were to take off the financial cost of the flu each year, it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars of lost time, wages, and productivity. For sure, in the U.S., it could be even global, but it's a big thing. So I hope that, you know, as we've deviated very much from our conversation of separation to what we're dealing with now, I hope that, again, we get wiser and not dumber.
Well, I think what we're seeing happening with COVID and viruses in general, pandemics in general, is, I don't know how it's going to sound kind of childlike to say it this way, but a request from the rest of the world that we human beings find the right balance of science and nature to take care of ourselves and our environments. Because if you're washing your hands and wearing a mask and doing all the things that we've been taught over the last 9 months to do, 9 months, year, then you're taking good care of your environment and you don't have to use a ton of chemicals to do that.
Right.
And if you eat a generally healthy diet and you aim to incorporate basic herbal practices, you know, you've got a slight sniffle coming on, maybe try some elderberry tea, for instance. You know, just use the basic herbal stuff that's easily available. Your stomach's upset, use some ginger, whatever, you know, or mint. Use those things first. And when that's not enough, then move into starting to look at science for better answers to stay well. Meanwhile, consider the vaccine seriously, you know, especially if you've got a compromised system for any reason. People who are older, people who have previous disease histories or conditions, people who are caring for those who are older or have those types of conditions. I mean, you know, there's a lot of people that should be probably seriously looking at the vaccine and having herbs in their back pocket.
Yeah. I think she really brought that, forward with her energy of herbs and herbalism. It was refreshing.
Yeah.
To hear that, because you and I've been talking with people that have been herbalists for multiple years. 10, 15, 20 years. They've you've got their experiences there where they're at, but it was really a treat to listen to somebody that was really new in the career, new in their field, and had all of the energy that goes with it, and the excitement of discovery and learning. That was really great. And I think, it's so magical for like when she found her house, and she just like,
I know.
There it is, and then it worked out. I don't know how many times you and I said, there's our house. And it, for whatever reason,
it wasn't actually the right house.
It's not for sale, or if it's for sale, it's too much, or we don't have the financing or whatever. And no matter how we tried, we couldn't get it. It didn't just magically happen.
I think for us, we have been part of that older wounded culture that we have in our minds, had a mindset of what we thought we wanted, and we weren't really listening to what everyone else, the universe, whatever, nature was telling us. Yes. But where we ended up and where we have landed each of the times we've made a leap, we've landed exactly where we needed to be. Even if it wasn't where we thought we needed to be, the reality was it was exactly where we needed to be. And that difference between thinking and getting so stuck in a thought pattern compared to letting the world show you what you need. That's something that's been, I think, harder for our generation, for older generations. A lot of times, those of us who have gone through the older years, those of us who are older have lived in a world where sometimes just pure willpower was what would get you through to where you really needed to be or wanted to go. And it worked. It wasn't always pleasant. Sometimes it was really hard, but sometimes you had to really work hard, and it was all about that. And I kind of think I'm looking at the world and looking at what younger people, those who are willing to be flexible, like Alyssa was, who are willing to say, whoa, hey, this thing, life just blindsided me with this thing, and now I'm on a different path, and I'm hurt, and I'm going to give myself some time to grieve it, but then I'm going to get up and get moving again. And then she wrapped her head around a brand new world, and she's, thriving. Mm-hmm. I think that's the way that we all need to start thinking, and that's the wave of the future. But for those of us who have relied on our will to get through a lot, it's really hard. And I think that's part of what COVID is sort of telling all of us. Not just COVID, but, all the crazy changes in the world. It's been COVID, it's been fires, it's been frozen weather where it shouldn't be frozen. I mean,
Yeah, it's been a tumultuous time.
Yeah.
And one event by itself is bad, but the culmination of many events makes it very difficult.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are losing a little bit of their hope.
Yeah.
A little bit of their wonder, beaten down a little bit. But, then again, I always meet those other people like us, it's all's happened, but we keep trying to move forward. What else can we do,
Yeah.
And trying to make the best of all of our situations with it. So, back to our beginning, it's been so cool with, like I said, the proliferation of pop culture, herbal references, giving herbalism more popularity, meaning more credence, meaning more people are thinking about it because it's there.
It's like common.
It's like when Oprah would mention it, or Dr. whatever.
Phil.
Dr. Phil, not him, or
Axe. Dr. Axe.
Or whatever, Oz, whatever. I don't
Oz,
know.
there was a Dr. Oz, too.
So there's a lot of these people
all these different doctors
are talking about him on their talk shows and doing things. And, and not in talking to debunk it, but talk about how, there's value here and this is what it does.
Yeah.
And that's the great part. And I think more and more people are hearing that. And the more that you can repeat the message, the more that they'll hear. And
I know.
Glad that we're a resource for that ourselves with the podcast and the Practical Herbalist.
Yep. Yeah. Yay.
All right. Well, I guess with that then, put an herb on it.
The statements made about herbs and products on this podcast have not been evaluated by the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. All information provided on this podcast or any affiliated websites is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for advice from your physician or other healthcare professional. You should not use the information on this podcast and its affiliated websites for a diagnosis or treatment of any health problem. Always consult with a healthcare professional before starting any new vitamins, supplements, diet, or exercise program before taking any medication, or if you have or suspect you might have a health problem. Any testimonials, questions, or case studies are based on individual results and do not constitute a guarantee that you will achieve the same results.